welcome to the Twilight Lounge. This is Good for the Jews. We are the Jews. He is Eric Goldbrenner.
Shalom.
I am Larry Rosen, and I'm a bit ungroomed today, unfortunately. I apologize. And in studio, Joe Fogel.
Joe Fogel in the house. Fogel in the Twilight Lounge.
Joe nodding. My mom can't see that.
Eric, good to see you. Barry, thanks for the invite.
It's Barack, actually. Joe, we brought you here today for a number of reasons, but the most important one to me is to find the answer to a very important question that's dogged me for a very long time. Why'd you kick me out of poker group?
I tried
you
to
guys go
explain
on
this
trips
to
to
him.
Bend, Oregon now. I'm not invited.
Tried to explain this to him.
The poker group is not for the Hirzut challenged.
I'm not here to challenge
But I
you.
know what that
hurt.
means.
That hurt. Damn.
It means someone who's not hairy, and no one in this room can say that about themselves.
Right. You should have listened to our previous podcast where we noted that whatever's lacking on the crown disappeared on the back.
Ah.
Okay.
Right. The problem
Okay.
is that Joe doesn't actually listen to the podcast.
I listened to the last one, which puts me in a very small minority of the population that actually has listened to one of them.
The other 15 people that listen to it.
If he listened, do you think he'd be here?
But I need to. There's an underlying assumption to your question that we kicked you out. I don't believe we ever kicked you out.
I think the calls just stopped coming.
Well,
Eric's nodding. Yeah,
It was a tacit kick out. Can you say
Yeah.
that?
It was a
Tacit?
passive
Tacit.
aggressive. It was
Passive, right.
It was
passive.
like if poker was Facebook, I was unfriended.
It wasn't a kick out. It's just once you left, we let the door remain closed.
You know, I hate poker.
Tell him what happened. Tell him you gotta have the money to get in the game. You gotta bet the money. You have to play the game like you mean it. You have to show up. You have to.
Okay,
make
I
the
did everything but
commitment.
play the game like I mean it because I kind of hate poker. In fact, I'd probably rather be watching the World Cup right now than playing poker.
So you're saying
Yep.
you'd rather be doing something else?
it was really for your own benefit,
Okay.
Harry, because you kept on losing money, and we felt
I didn't mind it.
We felt bad.
Well, I told you what my theory is. My theory was $40 is a small price to pay for a night of hanging out with these guys.
Yeah, and in all fairness, Kimmel loses a ton. You know, he keeps coming back,
And he listens to the podcast.
which is why we drop his name.
I didn't realize until now the extent of your lingering bitterness, considering it's been a bit of a while.
It's been eating at me a little bit, but...
You know what? Next time poker's at your house, why invite Larry instead of me?
No, I'm not taking your spot. Because you're an actual poker... You know what I'd rather do? Here's the reality. The reality is that I hate poker. I'd rather be like, once we played at your house, when I was one of the 2 times I was invited, and Eric showed up and just annoyed everyone. I'd like to do that. I'd like to show up, not play, and annoy everyone.
Compared to me, you're not that annoying.
Oh, I can be very annoying.
Here's the reason I want you to
Mom?
play at Joe's house is because when
Good
you go,
snacks. Great snacks.
great snacks
Yeah.
by your
Everyone's
standard, yes.
Yeah,
You
really
know,
good snacks.
vegetarian, no salt, no sugar, no carbs.
Excellent snacks
vegan,
for a middle-aged
you know.
Jewish man.
And so I went there once, and Joe's wife, God bless her, she made cookies out of edamame. Am I correct? The flour was made of edamame.
Those
Do you
were
know-
nasty.
Oh, those were bad,
I don't
man.
know if I could do that, and I love it.
I mean, so I got the feeling that she didn't want me to come back.
This is not your parents' poker game. I'm sure they used
Well,
to.
that's good, because my father also hates poker.
I'm sure they used to smoke cigars and eat all kinds of chazarai. Good word. I was going to. Yeah, nice. Good word.
Joe brings a little more of a Jewy angle to us in that he once studied to be a rabbi. Is that
Well,
true?
you know-
This is not true.
What did you do? I thought you
This
were
is
in
not-
like,
unless
the
you
Jewish
talk to my
version of
parents.
seminary.
No, this is not true. I was an Orthodox Jew. I went to yeshiva, but at no time was I studying to be a rabbi,
okay.
despite what my parents wanted.
Did you ever attend yeshiva in Israel?
Oh.
I did.
So you're
in
like
the-
1 foot in the rabbinate right there.
Okay, you know what? That is something I did want to talk about on a more serious note today. Was the 3 kids, the yeshiva students that got kidnapped?
Uh,
Bad
how
for
are
the
we going to
Jews.
have fun with that?
We can't have fun with it, but I
Bad
just
for
wanted
the
to bring
Jews.
it up because, me being me, of course, I read the comments.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, that's a
he
mistake.
like reads the news online, then he reads the commentaries on the boards, and then he goes ballistic because
Because it was, we deserve it.
But I think it's a legitimate question to ask whether it's good for the Jews or not on a serious note, because yes, you don't want bad things to happen, but you see how Bibi has used the situation to his benefit.
Agreed.
rounding up Hamas operatives, going into the West, but kind of cleaning up
And
shop.
putting a boss on the defensive where he goes,
Exactly.
I don't want any part of
Israel
this.
just went from being on the defensive to being on the offensive. So I think it's interesting to see how certain events happen. That's obviously, a tragedy for the families and the victims, but then you use it to your advantage.
Do you think, Paul, you think that's conscious?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you?
But no. Well, I think what you described is what occurred, and I definitely think it's bad for the Jews. And I think, and I applaud Netanyahu for strong leadership, but we've been down this path before. This is the cycle of violence. The Hezbollah or the Hamas, they're always going to provoke Israel. Whenever a conflict is looming, they go out and they take hostages. That's what happened with Gilad Shalit. And
Right.
it triggered a huge war, and at the end of the day, it wasn't good for anyone. It wasn't good for the Arabs, who got bombed back to the tune of $1 billion worth of property damage, not to mention 1,500 lives lost. It wasn't good for the Jews, because we lost hundreds, maybe not hundreds, like 150 soldiers, and we don't have so many people to spare. And what did Israel gain? Diplomatically, territorially, politically, really nothing. So all that violence just set us back to the status quo, which is not good to begin with.
So you think that's Hamas' plan?
I think I think what Hamas is trying to do is provoke a conflict with Israel, so it forces Abbas and the Palestine Authority to take a stand against Israel in a line to basically come back to the rejectionist.
Seems like anytime they get a little closer, something like this happens. And
Of
again, I'm
course.
talking out of my butt. There's 3 things you'll know, Joe, early let me establish. 1, Eric's on fire. 2, I'm huge. And 3, I'm talking out of my butt. Those last 2 put together, not so good.
I happen to think, at least for the short term, I'll disagree with you a little bit. I think it was a strategic mistake. And to the extent it was Hamas, it was probably a splinter group. I don't think they would have wanted to do it. It's a strategic mistake for the short term. It really, the whole PR war, which Israel usually loses, this is a big victory for Israel.
Yeah.
It puts into...
Except according to the commenters.
Well, I don't know about the commentator, but it puts, it makes the picture a little bit more black and white, with clarity, about terrorists and their activities, and it's kind of a rallying point for Israel to the international community. So I think there's some benefit there.
I politely disagree, because I don't think the international community or anyone at all can really relate to Israel's position. I think what they're doing is they're watching the Israel-Arab conflict like a football game, and they're keeping score. And they do the numbers. They say, well, Israel arrested 51 Hamas guys, and Hamas is only holding 3 Israelis. Therefore, Israel's overreacting. And
Now, are you putting the emphasis on the first syllable like Churchill would call Hitler Nazis? Because they're
What?
Hamas, not Hamas. You make them sound like
That's
a
the old
delightful...
Bush thing.
Hamas.
Saddam.
Yeah,
when Bush said
but
Saddam.
that's what Churchill did during World War II. The Nazis.
No, it's a technique.
Hummus is a
like when you
delightful
want to
dip that I use
demonstrate.
for everything.
That's
It's pretty healthy too.
Oh, it's so good.
That was
0
Borat
points in
who
Weight
made
Watchers.
that
I like the
What's it?
edamame hummus.
Oh, very good.
No,
Sometimes I
it's-
heard you can make that into cookies as well. Not as good.
When you call them Nazis or Hamas or Saddam, what you're doing is purposely mispronouncing their name to show your
Well, sure.
disdain.
That's
for
like
them.
calling the last president W.
Right, exactly.
Or the new president Barry.
Well, I think
Not as many people do that.
Yeah,
At
Barry.
least not- I don't.
I think that was his
I don't know what
nickname
people
when,
call
when
him.
he was a young kid.
He
I
was
think they
Barry.
called him
Yeah, that's
Barry.
true.
Right. No, I think people call him "Oh Bummer."
Sometimes
So-
when I want to disrespect, I just call him B.O.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah,
I
you like
find
that?
I find it kind of interesting that we recaptured 50 Hamas terrorists who we had
We're eating hummus.
pretty recently just re-released into society. As
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of the-
I
as part
noticed
of the
that.
show.
They were
was
part of
kind
the trade.
I don't know what to think about it, but it's sort of
You
look,
just thought they were just going to live very peaceful, law-abiding lives. You think there's guys at the top of Hamas, who are politicians, just straight up, they know, like, oh, shoot. Who act as
They have
you
a
think
political
they
wing
got guys,
in the head of the
but guys who
political
are
wing.
wired like politicians, who act like politicians and act no.
Is there a single politician
Ooh,
in the
we
Arab
almost
world?
We almost had a noteworthy event here on the podcast. Eric almost dropped the podcast first F-bomb. Thank you,
Well,
Eric.
I didn't want to offend Joe.
You know you won't
Got a
offend
guest
Mom.
here. Right.
Mom's fine
Yeah,
with that.
I've read some of her emails.
Yeah.
You hear about that L.A. mayor who dropped the F-bomb in the, what was my thing, by the L.A. Kings, who unfortunately beat my New York Rangers and to win the Stanley Cup? And he said, I know there's two things that as a politician you shouldn't do, and that's have a alcohol in your hand, and he had like a beer in his hand, and drop the F-bomb. But this is so effing amazing or something.
This is Garcetti, right? Is that
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
good for
He's
him.
trying to be one of the people.
That works for
Remember
me.
when Dick Cheney took some senator aside and basically told him to F off, and then it was captured and it became.
I don't
big
think he
news story?
did that to curry favor. I think that's just how he talks.
I think that's how. Could you imagine if you're like in the Senate, Dick Cheney? I mean, that guy.
he was probably the
pulls you
scariest
aside.
guy.
I'd pee my pants.
Larry,
Yes.
I'd like to
Circle back.
circle back and take over.
We have to do that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotta stay focused.
I want to take over your host duties for a second. And
Please do.
there's something that I was curious about, and I'd like to address this to Eric, because as you say, he's on fire.
Yeah.
When is something terrorism? Is it just when it's not on your side? So, for example, we talked about the kidnapping of the 3 teenagers,
Yeah.
one of whom has dual citizenship with the United States, and I wonder how that'll impact anything. But nevertheless, so they were kidnapped, and it's an act of terrorism, we're saying. Of course, the other
Oh,
side.
I'm not saying.
Okay, but
You didn't hear that
I
from
want to broaden it out, because we're sitting here with one of the foremost experts
Authorities on.
on Menachem Begin.
Oh,
That is true.
Okay,
I don't know if
and
And
That's
if you
true.
have not
But,
yet made your contribution to the movie, please let me call that out
I didn't
now.
realize we do plugs. I
Oh,
wish-
yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what we're here for.
Yeah,
I
I
would
wish
do
I could-
plugs.
I wish I could
I
plug
could
something.
use
my
some
lounge,
plugs.
baby. My lounge, my rules.
That's right.
So,
Go on.
some who might have called in the past Begin the number one terrorist. I'm using air quotes.
Terrorist number one.
Larry's mom, right?
Mom,
Okay.
can't see Joe doing air
Um,
quotes there.
So, some considered him a terrorist. I'm not sure if Eric would or would not.
This is an interesting problem. Okay, first of all, Menachem Begin terrorism and hostage taking. Let me just tell you a story. In the 1940s, there were a bunch of members of Begin's merry band of terrorists, is what they called. I don't think they were terrorists, but some of these freedom fighters, they were captured by the British. They were sentenced to death. And the British had already executed some of the Etzel men. So everyone in Israel, everyone in the world knew the British was going to hang these guys. And they knew that politically, to maintain their presence on the world stage, they had to hang them. They had to show them who's boss, So these guys were going to hang, these Jewish boys. They were boys. They were like, some of them were like 17, 18, 19, right? So what did Menachem Begin do? Turned around and kidnapped British officers, held them prisoner, and told the British, if you execute our men who are prisoners of war, that's a war crime, and we will retaliate. It's the just law of revolution, that if you attack us and you commit a war crime and you execute our soldiers who were captured on the battlefield, and you take them as prisoners alive, and then you summarily execute them, it's a war crime, and we will retaliate in kind. Okay, Begin was branded a terrorist, and this whole episode was perceived as terrorism. So it depends on your perspective. I personally agree with Begin's rationale in that circumstance. So now let's see how it applies to Hamas. Okay, what makes Hamas different than the Etzel? Okay, in similar circumstances. It's not that I prefer one and don't prefer the other, therefore one's a freedom fighter, the other is a terrorist. There's got to be some rationale here, and that's your question.
Yep.
What I believe the rationale is this, twofold. First of all, what is the action designed to achieve? Is it terrorism, or are you setting out to terrorize people and hoping that out of fear they will be motivated to do something that they don't really want to do? That's terrorism. You try to scare them or intimidate them into it. And then the other is there another option available? Is there a political option? Are you resorting to violence when a political option exists? Let's say in the case
it
of
terrorism?
What's that?
That makes it terrorism?
These are my criteria. And I say in the case of Hamas, they fail on both counts. Hamas has got a political option, and they're refusing to take it because they refuse to have any political, diplomatic relationship with Israel, any negotiations at all. When they were invited to be part of the Palestine Authority, a government, the Palestine Authority was created by a signed accord between the PLO and Israel. That's where the Palestine Authority came from. Their authority comes from Israel, and Israel's recognition and their recognition of Israel in reverse. And Hamas refused to be part of that authority. When they were elected, the leadership in Gaza, they immediately launched into a violent campaign against their Palestinian counterparts in Fatah, purged them all from government, So Hamas is refusing the political option and choosing violence. And what are these kidnappings designed to do? Are they trying to get any sort of concession out of Israel? Are they telling Israel, you had made a commitment to us and you're failing to follow through, and therefore we're going to take these hostages? Are they acting the way Begin did in a similar situation? Absolutely not. What Hamas is doing is they're saying, we don't like the political stalemate on the ground, and we don't like how we're being manipulated politically to join the Abbas government. We want to force Abbas to change his political position, so we're going to force his hand. We're going to take some hostages, and that's going to change the whole dynamic.
So it's pretty savvy.
So it's savvy, it's shrewd, it's terrorism.
They were duly elected, weren't they, Hamas?
Yeah, they were elected, but look, in the United States of America, when we elect a government, our government has to honor the commitments of the previous government. We recognize that the institution of state and government is bigger and more important than the current regime. Okay? The Arabs have a hard time understanding this.
Can I interrupt? Someone's
Yeah.
ringing your doorbell.
So?
Oh, I hear footsteps. Someone.
Let me ask you this.
So Twilight Lounge
Besides
is
us,
an exclusive place that happens to be in Eric's basement.
If it's the tax man, my kids are fully trained on how to use all the firearms, and they will deal with them accordingly.
You know what?
That was a joke, in case there's a government agents listening to the program.
Well,
NSA.
my parents live in Arizona, so the mom's not going to have a problem with that.
Right on. I like
Joe, when
your
you open your
mom
water,
all the
please
time.
make sure to do so audibly, so everyone knows you're drinking water. Water. You know what kind of strikes me, and this is again talking out of my butt, because I've never been to Israel and you guys have. So this is the West Bank, one of the most dangerous places that I assume is one of the most dangerous places for Jews. These guys were hitchhiking at 10 o'clock at night.
It's not as dangerous as you think.
Really?
Eric, can I ask you a question? It's a hitchhiking culture when I was in Israel 20 years ago. Why do kids, anyone, continue to hitchhike in Israel? I don't understand it.
That's
They'll
kind of
have
my
bus
question.
Look,
We don't hitchhike here. We're told like it's pounded into our head.
yeah, but look, here we have psycho killers, we have serial rapists, we have all sorts of horrible things.
Yeah, but
that
they have
go
like
on
a
here.
whole culture devoted to destroying them right next door.
Well, but
How do
they
you know
they
what
also
car not
have
to get in?
look. They also have a military establishment that controls the entire territory. Let's not be naive about what goes on. I mean, Israel's got hundreds of thousands of people under arms all over the place. Everyone who's of age has served in the military. The people in the West Bank are, for the most part, armed, right? And so,
Yeah, but if you get in the wrong car, that's not going to help.
this is true. I mean, and this is true. And this is, if I'll answer your question, but if you think about it, if you want to understand Israel's reluctance to release certain territories along the thin strip of land between Jordan and Israel, right? Because the whole question of why can't they come to a settlement and why can't they come to an agreement? And Israel wants to retain land. Let's think about what land Israel wants to retain. They want to retain the suburbs of Jerusalem, where most of these so-called settlers live. They're really living in suburbs of Jerusalem, which is a major metropolitan area. And then there's a thin strip of territory which runs across the border, the Jordan River, which borders Israel and the West Bank from Jordan. And Israel wants to control that as a security buffer.
Is that the Philadelphia corridor, or am I thinking of something else?
No, I think that's different.
Philadelphia.
Yeah,
And-
why? Yeah.
And so now you understand the rationale, because in a situation like this, Israel says, okay, they took some hostages. We know they're in the West Bank because they ain't got no way to get them out. Because we control the border to Jordan. If we did not, they could easily slip them across the border to Jordan, to Iraq. Pretty soon they're in Iran. We never see them again.
But if Hamas has them, are they in Gaza now?
Now, how would they get them from the West Bank to
I don't
Gaza?
know.
They'd have to
I'm
be
saying,
pretty
I have no
savvy.
idea.
I thought they were in the Hebron area.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
seems-
that's what the Israelis seem to think based on the news reports. I don't know. Who knows what really goes on? The Israelis know what's going on. They got excellent surveillance. They know what's going on,
Okay. I want to back off a little bit.
Yeah, what'd you bring that up?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Get out of
like-
Israel. Gillum. I want to know what Joe's notes are. Joe arrived with notes. He's a very prepared guy. First, actually, Mom, I want to give you a little background. Joe also sent his kids to the same Jewish day school as us. That's how we know him. Everybody loves him. He plays the guitar.
Yep.
Used to.
Kind of looks like
Used to.
Patrick Swayze, don't you think? Kind of got that
Bigger
Patrick Swayze
than
look.
Patrick Swayze. A little more, better muscle definition.
Patrick Swayze.
Like a Jewish
face.
Patrick Swayze with better muscle definition.
Yeah.
Better dance moves as well.
Oh, no.
But you don't get to see that often. But when they
Or
come
ever.
out, really,
let's
the
be
shame
real.
that I carry.
I need some liquid courage. When we were discussing the possibility of my coming on this show,
Yeah, it's a show.
okay, our friend Dale said, "Oh, you got to do your Borscht Belt routine." And of course, I'm not a comedian, but
And
Dale-
I should point out, Dale's the only one who wants to hear your Borscht.
Yes.
I don't think he's listened to any of
Does
our other
Dale know
11.
but
Borscht Belts?
I do think Larry's mom wants to hear it. So you know that the genesis of stand-up comedy was from the Catskills. Now, when my family started to go to the Catskills, maybe late '60s, early '70s, it was already past the
Right.
past the heyday of the whole
Yeah.
of the whole thing. But the Jews from Lower East Side, they clawed their way to the middle class. They started going on vacations, and they started going to the Catskills. It was a big deal. By the time I went, not so much, but they still served.
You went to the Catskills?
Yeah, for Passover, we used to go to the Grossingers, which used to be where everyone went, all the stars,
Now-
all the people.
Did we go to the Catskills because the Adirondacks wouldn't take us?
I think the Adirondacks are farther away. Catskills are
Yeah,
like
that's
an
true.
hour and a half. It's beautiful.
I'll
He's
have to ask
looking
my
for
mom
some-
about that.
He's looking for some kind of Jewish exclusion thing.
Something to get mad
Right,
at.
yeah.
No, I just always heard that. No, I mean, I'm fascinated by the idea of the Catskills. But how far away did your family get? Where'd you grow up, Joe? Long Island, right?
I grew up in Queens, New York.
Queens, New York. So Joe's legit.
Right, yeah.
He's the real deal.
I'm
Yeah,
the
I
real
think it was
deal.
Candy who came from out on the island.
Yes,
If you
she
remember in the
did.
back room, she's
Yeah, she's everybody's darling.
Yeah.
So these great comedians got to hone their skills there. For example, let's do a little quiz. Let's call this quiz. You can change your noses, but you can't change your Moses. So such great.
Did you just make that up?
No,
Oh.
my brother
What
Howie
does
used to
it
say
mean?
that.
Okay.
You can change your
Well,
noses.
think about it.
You can get a nose job. You can change your last name from Saperstein to Shaw, but they still know. They'll still figure
You'll
it out.
always be a Jew.
You'll always be a Jew. You can run, but you can't hide, as I always say.
So let's see if you can tell me the name of these
Bring it on,
Catskill
man.
performers.
It's the first Good
Oh,
for
like
the Jews podcast quiz.
You're going to tell us their real name, and we're going to figure out who they.
Very good.
All right.
And
You have to
also,
break it down for me.
let's see
You
if
know.
let's see if the audience can figure it out. AKA Larry's
Oh,
mom.
my mom's
Right.
going to know all this stuff.
Edward Israel Iskowitz.
Eddie Cantor.
Excellent.
Yes!
Woo!
I am actually a 75-year-old man.
Why do I know you're going to be good at this?
Nathan Birnbaum.
Oh, shoot.
Milton Berle.
No,
Good
I
guess,
knew
because
this
Milton
one.
Berle was one of the kings.
my guess is
shoot.
will be
No, I don't know it.
George Burns.
Oh, Nathan Birnbaum. My mom's like probably walking through Arizona right now with like little headphones on. George Burns!
You ever see the movie Oh God with George
Yeah.
Burns? Cute movie. Okay.
Better God, George Burns or Morgan Freeman?
Oh, George Burns.
Well, we got that Jew thing. Go ahead.
Orthodox Jew. Benjamin Kubelski.
Benjamin Kubelski. No, don't know it. I'm tailing off fast.
I don't know.
Jack Benny.
Oh, Jack Benny.
Oh, I love Jack Benny.
Finally, last one. This is not someone I associate with being a stand-up comedian. Nevertheless, must have been,
That's one point.
how he started. David Daniel Kaminsky.
Not Melvin Kaminsky. We all know who that is.
Who the hell's
Who's Melvin Kaminsky? You have Mel Brooks?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Not Mel Brooks.
David Kaminsky. Not Mel Brooks' brother, because he
No.
didn't have any. He was an only child.
Just want to point out, when I was a boy, what we used to call Snuggie was a Melvin. It's just an important historical note.
I thought a Melvin was when you pulled up someone's underwear from the back.
Right, that's a
That's a
Snuggie.
wedgie.
It's what we call
well,
a
see,
wedgie.
we have a lot of cultural differences
Right.
going on.
It's
Tell us who
wedgie,
David Kaminsky
snuggie.
is.
Danny Kaye.
Oh, right. I knew
Danny
that.
Kaye is Jewish?
Yes.
Danny Kaye thought he was an Irish guy.
Just
Didn't he
like
have
Super
blonde
Dave
hair?
Osborne's real name is Bob Einstein.
Super Dave Osborne is...
Do you remember him?
He was a...
He's still around, isn't he?
Yeah, he's on Curb Your Enthusiasm. But his real name is Bob Einstein, and his brother is...
Albert Einstein?
Yes, who goes by the name Albert Brooks. This is good, Joe, because this brings up something fundamentally different in the way each of us was raised, which also brings me to the thing I wanted to talk about this week. Eric and I discussed this earlier. I think it's very interesting that the three of us fall in different points along the nice Jewish boy continuum. So I wanted to talk about whether being a nice Jewish boy was good for the Jews or not. Now, before you say this is something I made up, it's a real thing. It's a movie trope. The nice Jewish boy is a movie trope. Let's see.
When you say trope to him, he's thinking... Mercha, Tibcha, Munachet, Nachta.
I don't even know what that means.
It's the cannellation for the Haftorah, right?
Okay. No.
Cannellation, that's a good word.
No. It is a stereotype. Okay. It's a real thing. He's an emasculating. Is it emasculating? This is the notes I just took. I took them like 3 weeks ago. I thought, no, I want to talk to Joe about this. So here's what I wrote. Stereotype of a nice Jewish boy from Ashkenazi ideal of... Jeez, I can't even read my own writing. Ed...
He removes the glasses to read his writing.
Educate? Does that sound like something we would say? Here's what the nice Jewish boy is known for. Nobility, delicateness, studiousness, gentleness, and sensitivity. It distinguishes a Talmudic scholar, makes him an attractive marriage partner, which I think at one time all of us must have been because we talked people into marrying us. Here's the bad side. It could be emasculating. He could be a sissy. He spends his life in a quest to be a regular guy. Here are some examples.
If you call us out right now, there's going to be some,
Here are some examples from modern film. Ben Stiller. Jason Biggs, who isn't even Jewish.
He's not.
Ross on Friends. Kyle on South Park. Here's an example of someone who spent his whole life trying to overcome his nice Jewish boyness. Norman Mailer.
Woody Allen.
Philip Roth. I don't think Woody Allen is a nice Jewish boy.
No? All right, scratch.
I think on the continuum, Joe is a nice Jewish boy. I'm sort of a nice Jewish boy, and you reject being a nice Jewish boy.
No, I'm a nice Jewish boy. I just don't think we need to be sissies. I think you can be a nice, sensitive, and all that other good stuff. But if somebody, shoves
I don't
you,
know. Let me ask you
shove
this.
them back.
Let me use a flashpoint. Several years ago, we've talked about this before on the podcast. The God, what's the name of those crazy people? From Kansas that hate everybody.
Westboro.
Yeah. When Westboro
Baptist
came,
Church.
was going to come to our school. There was a divide among males on how to respond.
Meaning there was me and everyone
No,
else.
dude, I was
There
totally
like
in the
me
middle.
Well, first
and
say what-
Harlan and Ian Zimmerman.
First thing, what the administration requested.
I don't actually remember what the administration requested.
They said, look, the best way to deal with these people is to ignore them. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to react because that's what they're looking for. They want the media attention, so we're just going to try to ignore them.
Right.
Please do not protest against them, counter-protest. Just keep quiet.
Which is, I think, what would have happened, with one notable exception. But that response is a very nice Jewish boy response. And it's funny because I think, I guess when I think of nice Jewish boy, I think of it as a pejorative. Because to me that means don't do anything, don't make waves, be good, be nice. If there's a way to defeat them, we all crack our knuckles. If there's a way to defeat them, we'll do it through the proper channels, right?
I think baseball bats are proper.
But I wonder, this is just a little tangent, you can get back to it, but is that like a post-Holocaust kind of thing? We can't cause any trouble, we have to,
That's a good question, Eric.
Now, post-Holocaust, if you should learn one thing, it's self-defense. Should have learned that before the Holocaust.
Yeah, you should.
But in terms
is
of
that what happened?
Apparently not.
No, but if you have survived the Holocaust, are you thinking we have to defend ourselves, or have you just sort of developed into a survival mode where I have to just be careful just to survive?
Well, I
That's
can
an
only,
interesting
yeah.
point because I don't know. Like, I always tell you about being at Grandparents' Day. Not you, Eric. And I was working the front gate and watching all these tough old Jews walk up there and say, what happened to us?
So you're saying there's something about the Jewish culture
Right.
specifically. That is
And how
not
much
right.
of that is like, if you're a nice Jewish boy, you're good to your mother, right? You know, Joe, you were actually a lawyer. Help, my son the lawyer's drowning. That's like the old joke, right?
Well, here's a joke that relates to, what's expected of
Really, what we expect
Offspring.
really is for you to answer the question.
Yeah, dude.
Well, I like
It's
to
not
answer.
complicated.
I like to answer
You keep
with.
going to your notes like
I
you
like
showed
to-
up with an obvious agenda here. You
I'd
can't
like to-
read from the script.
I'd like to answer with pre-made jokes, so I don't have to think for myself. It's a beautiful thing. So listen to
Such
this.
a nice Jewish
There,
boy.
and I never heard of this one. There is a big controversy on the Jewish view of when life begins. In Jewish tradition, the fetus is not considered viable until it graduates from medical school. So there's a sense of what the expectations
So
are.
there's some pressure on us.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the question again?
I can't remember now.
That I'm not answering?
Shoot. The expectation. No, that's a good one. So we are faced with these expectations, and we don't rebel for the most part. We try to adhere to them, which puts some pressure on us.
And I see huge amount of rebellion within the Jews, just like in any other people. The young generation rejects the values of the old generation. You know, we got now here in our milieu, right? High degree of intermarriage. When I was a kid, that was absolutely the one thing.
Raising
like,
my
don't
hand.
do it. Right? We got
not a Jewish boy
new
thing to do.
forms of Jewish ritual, including atheism. But all sorts of new things. Reconstructionist Judaism. We didn't have that when I was a kid. Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, but
Who
through
invented
it,
that?
I think through it all, this trope, thank you, I'll use that word again,
Yeah.
continues to exist. Although, think of the kids, now you have daughters, and my son is not really a nice Jewish boy because...
He's not nice.
No, he's nice. he's not that way where he wants to please everyone. But did you see can you spot them when they're little kids? Did you spot them? No, I mean kids who were little kids that your daughters knew. Oh, speaking of daughters, I wanted to talk about your graduation. How'd that go, guys?
It's really meaningful.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was really. It's obviously a milestone.
Is it a weird thing? Because, especially for you, Joe, because you have an only child like I do. It's
Our daughters graduated high school. Joe and my daughter.
my mom knew
graduated
that.
from
We
the
talked
same
about it
school.
last week.
Yeah. Yeah, but you think they're going to remember from week to
Hey,
week?
her memory is very sharp.
Yeah, but Kimmel too. Don't forget him.
Oh, I forgot about Kimmel. Sorry. Like me, you've devoted 18 years of your life to this one project, and now it's over.
Well, it's
I'm
true.
gonna say over.
And my wife especially
It's
is
changed.
very cognizant of the pending empty nest and the fact that yes, the focus has been on our daughter
And now she will have to talk to
for
you.
all the years, and
deal
now we
with
have
you.
to find something to talk about.
Jeez, I'm sorry about that.
But
Well, a lot of people get
could bring your
divorced at
notes.
this point in their marriage.
I
think
thought-
we're done with our kids, raising all that. I think we should get divorced.
Yeah. I mean, we saw some too. Just when your kid turns 12 or 13 and they start having their own stuff to do, and you're there and like, hey, it's you. I always said you can go one of two ways, and we were fortunate in that we were like, hey, it's you, or oh god, it's you. And we saw people split up, at that point, because they were faced with this idea of being with this person they really didn't like all that much.
Are you talking about your kids or your
No,
spouse?
the adults, the spouses. Your
Yeah.
kid goes off and does his or her own thing, even if that own thing is a lot of Minecraft in their bedroom. See, that's a completely alien concept to you because you have girls.
It's not so different than
What's
sitting there
Minecraft?
and typing on the computer or drawing pictures in your notebook or whatever else. As long as you're in your room minding your business, that solves the one "ooh, it's you" problem right there.
No, I meant the ooh, it's you with your spouse.
I know what you meant, but I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saying it applies universally. I get "ooh, it's you" plenty of places. I don't just need it for my spouse.
I'm going to jump around a little bit and get back to what you were saying before about the rebellion of nice Jewish boys. To the extent we buy into that premise that they weren't rebelling in years past and they're rebelling now. There was probably always rebellion. Nevertheless, I wonder what your opinion is about whether it's good for the Jews. Because, when Jews were, didn't have a homeland and were persecuted, it was that religious and separate element of the Jewish people that really preserved the Jewish people. And my question is this kind of rebellion good for the Jews?
I think what you said's right. For the years we were in the diaspora, we cultivated a sense of what it meant to be Jewish, and we established ourselves as others, and we rejected a lot of the world around us to retain our unique identity. And that sustained us, and central to that was Torah, and that sustained us. However, there in past history, go back I'm not saying decades, but I'm saying hundreds of years, there have been movements within the Jewish people that were certainly, I wouldn't call them rebellions, but certainly a significant break with the past. And what it must have meant was that young Jewish people rejected the values of their older parents and embraced new values. And I'm talking about, the Reform movement, where
Right.
Jews changed their religious practice and their standing in society. I'm talking about the Socialist movement, where Jews decided we are basically just another ethnic group or a subculture, but we're all basically workers, and we can actually enjoy the same lives and quality of lives and place in society as our Russian or Polish comrades if we were to buy into this value system. I'm talking about Zionism, where Jews said, I'm talking about militant Zionism, where Jews actually said being a sissy is not getting us anywhere. It's not stopping the pogroms.
Right.
It's
Which
not
seems like
stopping-
that's always been a split within Judaism.
Well,
Those who would say being a sissy is just going to get you your face beat in, and those who would say, no, that's not the way to go about it.
no, but that's a relatively new idea. You can trace what I'd call Jewish militarism back like a little, maybe 100 years. Before that, it didn't exist. Before that, the Jewish people were pacifist people, and we had no political standing because before the European Enlightenment, we had no political standing either, which gave us one and only one option as a people to preserve ourselves. That was to move. And that's why we became the wandering Jews. So I'm saying after a history of centuries of being the wandering Jew, focused on Torah, identified as a religious minority of stateless people living amongst others who are hostile to them, we started to change our mindset, and generation after generation modified their belief in what it meant to be a Jew and started changing their practices. Imagine what it meant in the context of a family.
So let me ask you this. This just occurred to me, and again, I'm talking out of my butt. And you might know this more having gone to yeshiva, but to what degree was this made possible by are the seeds for the rebellion in the Torah?
You're the yeshiva.
Yeah, you're the yeshiva guy.
I don't know about that, but getting back to your question, yes, I believe you can study Torah and not be a religious Jew and still be what you might consider to be rebellious to the extent that
So it
you
wasn't a
don't
break with that.
practice.
It wasn't a break
No,
with the
because I
tenets of
know
the religion.
my brother studies Torah, and he's not religious. He's a cool guy,
Is he a nice Jewish
Look,
boy?
anyone can study Torah, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to be
exactly.
a Jew to study
Right,
Torah.
exactly.
But the Jewish religion, we can't discount the role of the Torah as the nucleus.
I guess that's what
Let's
I'm
face
asking.
it,
Is
the whole
what is the
religion,
role of the Torah?
The Torah is the nucleus. The whole religion is the rabbinical teaching that is built. It's extrapolated from the
But
Torah.
are the seeds of that rebellion in the Torah?
Why not?
Did we get that from
I would
there,
say
or did we get
yeah.
it from somewhere else?
I see. For me, I would say I see no discontinuity.
Discontinuity.
I see
Nice
no
word.
irreconcilable difference between Jewish political activism and what's written in the Torah. Now, there may be some rabbinical teachings that say we ought to be expressing ourselves as Jews in this way or that way, and nationalism and militarism or socialism or whatever are incompatible. And those religious Jews or those Jews are free to believe that and go off and be anti-Zionist or anti-whatever. But for me, as a Jew, I don't feel an innate sense of conflict because I don't see any discontinuity between what's in the Torah and Zionism. To the contrary, I think what's in the Torah really supports what I believe as
Okay,
a Jew and
that's what I
Zionism.
was asking.
We're a people with an identity. We came from somewhere. We have a language. And our wanderings on this earth can be traced and historically. And we know exactly where we resided and what was going on that turned our cultures into what they were at that time. And the vision of going back and living in Jerusalem, living in Zion, it's always been there. So I don't feel any personal, sense of discord between what the Torah says and what we are doing as living Jewish people today.
Joe, you got any Catskills lines for that?
I don't, but I don't think there's anything in the Torah that actively is telling you
Go rebel.
you can now disregard everything that we just said here.
Okay, I think that's kind of what I was asking, but I wish, gosh, I'm the opposite of a Torah scholar. Do you want to talk about the
Torah
1962
ignoramus?
Mets? I am a 1962 Mets scholar. I can tell you all about Elio Chacon, but I cannot tell you about the Torah.
Please tell me about
Yeah.
who?
We'd like to know.
Elio Chacon, the shortstop, remember? The guy who got in
I
the
do
fight
not.
with Willie Mays?
I do not remember.
Oh, man.
Why does he have to be short, first of all?
Who?
If he's a Jewish player, he's got to be the shortstop?
He was Cuban. He wasn't Elio Chacon?
Cohen.
No, Chacon.
Oh, I thought his name was Ilyosha.
There were no Jews on
His
the
last name was
1962
Cohen. And I
Mets.
say, next question, why does Cohen got to fight with Willie Mays? If anyone should be backing Willie Mays, it should be Cohen. You got me all confused.
There were no Jews on the 62 Mets. Not even Tim Harkness, not Frank Thomas, none of them. Jay Hook, not Jewish.
Really?
Yep.
Sandy Koufax was Jewish.
Sandy Koufax
Jewish?
was Jewish and was a nice Jewish boy.
And what was it? He didn't play? Was it a World Series game?
He didn't play in Yom Kippur in the World Series. Neither did Deshaun Green. Neither did Hank Greenberg. Neither did... I think that might be it.
That wouldn't go down so well in this year.
What do you mean?
I mean, maybe back when they did it way back then.
No,
They-
Sean
they-
Green did it, and Sean Green just retired a couple years ago.
Oh, really?
And it was huge because he was not a nice... Well, he might have been a nice Jewish boy, but he was not even barely culturally Jewish.
Right.
But he decided to take Yom Kippur off because he realized there's not a whole lot of Jew studs going around out
Right.
there. And he was the one at that time. He thought, well, okay, all of a sudden I feel a big responsibility,
Right, well,
so I'm going to take the day off.
good man.
Yes, he was a good man and a nice man, but a nice Jewish boy,
And
I don't know.
I'm sure he received nothing but contempt and ire delivered upon his head.
I didn't read the comments back then, but I do know that at least publicly the party line was, no, this is a good thing.
Imagine you're watching a basketball game, and now you got this 7-foot-tall Muslim coming out, with the head cover on.
Which,
covered
other than the
to
head
toe.
cover, is not an unusual occurrence.
Right.
Akeem Olajuwon.
Akeem Olajuwon.
He played with a head covering?
No, I said other than the head covering.
Oh.
No, but Mahmoud Abdul Rauf used to fast during the season.
Yeah, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was Muslim.
Yes, he was.
But see, at least these guys didn't stop the game and have to, pray for, 5 minutes in the middle of the game. It's like, oh, wait, the sun's setting.
Yeah, that would be a
You're
problem.
shifting of the lights. I got to pray, It'd be a little awkward. The Jews, what are we asking for? One day
One day off.
What,
That's
you
it.
can't schedule the World
But
Series?
unfortunately, it
on
always
Yom Kippur?
seems to take place during the World Series. Now, oddly enough, you never hear about football players, and there are Jewish football players.
Oh, come on.
One of them went to. No, he didn't go to Brandeis. He went to the Orthodox one. Igor Olshansky. He went there.
Russian.
He
He's
was
making
Russian.
this up, by the way.
No, look, you could look it up. It's Casey Stengel. It's Igor Olshansky went. What's the Orthodox day school? Orthodox Jewish school in San Francisco.
The Orthodox day school?
It's not a day school. It's a K through 8 and it's Orthodox.
Hebrew Academy?
Hebrew Academy. He went to Hebrew Academy K through. Then he went to SI,
My man.
and then he played for the Cowboys and the Chargers.
Well, they wouldn't let him on the Cowboys if he didn't go to SI. If he went to Jewish high school, then who could he play for?
This was a major deal growing up for me. I always loved to watch sports. And inevitably, the World Series always fell some of the days, some of the games, on either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. And it was maddening. We were Orthodox. We did not watch TV.
What about a Friday night game followed by a Saturday day game? You couldn't watch that either, right?
You missed 2 games. And
Cool.
it was...
Why do you think we invented TiVo?
and of course, back in the day, there was no time shifting technology.
That's what
You just
TiVo is.
didn't watch it,
Right. You
and
missed
it
it.
was
couldn't be-
maddening. It was frustrating.
Well,
Boy,
you
that
make
was.
sacrifices.
How do you expect? I had a hard enough time with my parents as an ultra-reformed Jew explaining to me why Santa Claus wasn't coming. I can't imagine not being allowed to watch a World Series.
So what do you
We
think?
didn't do that either. My mom, I remember once I turned on the radio in the car as we drove to synagogue on Yom Kippur. We're practical people, right? But I turned on the radio. My mom, you would think I had just shot John
Yes.
Kennedy.
The only time my parents turned the radio on the Sabbath. When do you think?
Yom
JFK.
Kippur War.
No, what?
Yom Kippur War.
During the wars, whether it was 67 or Yom Kippur, when there's a war, they turned on the radio.
Because to save a life.
Well, they're not saving a
Trump's
life,
Shabbat.
but it's just there's
Well,
certain things.
Using the rabbinical logic, you could trump the Shabbat by saying I'm somehow saving a life by listening. There may be news that allows me to act in such a way that I can intervene and save a life. I'd better listen.
So, Joe, did you grow up in a 100% Jewish world? All friends, everyone you saw Jewish?
Well, I don't know if I would take it literally to that degree, but it was a Jewish environment. My friends were mostly Jewish. When I played in basketball, it was a Jewish league. When I hung out Saturday night at the pizza place, it was a Jewish pizza place with Jewish people. Certainly, my daughter, who has gone to a Jewish school, not a yeshiva, but a Jewish school, has had many opportunities to socialize and meet non-Jewish people through the volleyball league or just through the course of living. But I think it's fair to say I was mostly interacting with Jews.
But so on Saturday, everybody was not watching TV. It wasn't just you.
No, I mean I lived in a neighborhood where it was a mix of people and a mix of. I didn't live in a shtetl.
I should hope not. You didn't have that experience.
I'm not from Anatevka, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what was the percentage of Jews in your neighborhood?
There were plenty of Jews. Jews, maybe it's still happening today, but Jews tend to live around
other Jews.
Well, around the synagogue. The synagogue was and perhaps still is, the main social, cultural, religious center. And to the extent you're Orthodox,
especially if you got to walk there,
which we were exactly, you have to walk to the synagogue. So everyone's within a mile radius of the synagogue, and that's sort of how you think of people. Oh yeah, Schlissels, they live a mile away from the synagogue. Oh, they're dedicated, and Bernsteins, they live 2 blocks away. So you think in those terms. But the community, the neighborhood also consisted of non-Jews as well.
So, but they must have been, well, I don't know for sure, but, so I'm just comparing it to when I was a kid, that feeling you would have in class, I think it was Fridays maybe, at 2 o'clock, when they'd do Christian release time, and they'd all leave.
What does that mean?
They would go do some religious thing, and there'd be 4 of us sitting there. And that feeling of I didn't even know that what they were doing was probably so incredibly boring. All I knew was everybody left and I was still there. So you never had that, when I think, if I thought of what if we had been Orthodox, so that meant on Saturdays I'd be sitting there I'd be the only one. If you're not the only one, it probably makes a big difference.
Yes, and I would walk to the synagogue and we'd have programming, on Saturday.
It was a fun day.
I even used
programming,
to play...
thought programming?
Yeah.
Like they're telling
that
you,
too.
You must marry a Jew.
Not brainwashing programming, but just social opportunities to be with kids and have activities. We used to play football on Saturday. Yeah, we weren't, we were modern Orthodox. So I'd go out and I'd play football or How
do you carry a ball on Shabbat?
What do you mean? Why can't you carry a ball?
You're not supposed to carry. So maybe I didn't.
But you have an A-roof around the
Well,
field?
I think we probably had an A-roof. Maybe we didn't play football. But
A-roof is so you can carry your tallis. Who are you fooling?
We would do sports.
They had the conservatives and the reform played the skill positions. You just played the line.
But it also depends on where you're living. I lived in New York. It's a very Jewish place. I didn't feel...
It's a Jewish town.
Honey Town, as Reverend Reggie Jackson.
I remember that from Saturday Night Live. That was very good.
It wasn't Saturday Night Live. It was Jesse Jackson.
It was Jesse Jackson, yeah.
No, but then they did a spoof on Saturday Night Live. That was hilarious.
How could you not?
I didn't feel out of place being Jewish in New York, and of course being Jewish in my neighborhood.
I didn't feel out of place being Jewish in Israel either.
Yeah,
you come to San Francisco, how do you feel?
But what a different way to grow up. So this whole concept, Eric and I talk a lot about this concept of the other, of being the other. You didn't have that growing up.
Well, I mean, you knew you were the other. You knew you were Jewish.
The whole community was the other.
We had we had an incident of one of our boys got mugged. I guess it was sort of an anti-Semitic act. Got his jaw broken, and it was that night. And there was an outrage, and there must have been some anti-Semitic things said because it was considered an anti-Semitic act. And,
crime.
and I'm sorry?
Hate crime.
Basically.
Hate crime. I don't know if they even used that terminology
didn't have
back
it back
then.
then.
And so there was a period of Friday nights, I don't know how long it lasted, maybe even a year, I don't know, where my father and these big, all Holocaust survivors, these big guys, would patrol the neighborhood with baseball bats.
Attaboy.
You imagine
Wow.
that?
All right.
I'm not making this up.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do.
And that's
absolutely
interesting.
right.
That's interesting too, because my experience growing up was, since there were so few of us, that never would have happened. Because if you asked most of the people we grew up with what they thought about Jews, they would have said, "I never met one." Like they didn't know. It never occurred to them.
Yeah, I don't know how this person was identified as Jewish, whether he was wearing a kippah, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, they probably knew he was there because he was in a Jewish neighborhood.
I think he was probably
They knew
wearing a
where to find the
kippah,
Jews.
maybe walking home from synagogue. I don't know.
But you see what happened here? These Holocaust survivors immediately, their instinct was
Yeah.
absolutely correct. Hey, we've seen this before. This is before they came and they took my house and all my property and put me in a train and sent me to a concentration camp and killed my entire family. Before that happened,
Jeez.
you know what happened? Was gangsters walking up down the street were calling me Jaime and pushing me around and slapping me on the head and pushing us off the sidewalk, kicking us, and no one lifted a finger and did anything. And that's what enabled those bastards to take the next step. So now we learn the hard way. Here we are, we're in America, we're in New York, we've got our community intact, we're survivors. We ain't gonna make that mistake again. We're gonna recognize the sign right away and we're gonna react the way we should. Okay? Your father did the right thing. What I'm surprised is his generation hasn't taught our generation very well.
That's my point. What happened?
What happened is, I'll tell you what I think happened is all this politically correct PC
There we go.
nonsense kicked
Now
in
we
and
finally
people
got to it.
bought into the illusion that no, everyone's really the same. Maybe if I wasn't wearing a yarmulke, I wouldn't be antagonizing them. Maybe if I didn't look so different, they'd treat me nicer, Or maybe, these people are just misguided with some kind of education. We can change them, Maybe we can educate the anti-Semitism out of them. People don't understand anti-Semitism is a human pathology. All right? And you can't educate it out of the people. You can't diplomatize it out of the people. It's there. It exists. It's always going to exist, and it's going to be out in the open and a practical force that we have to deal with, or it's not. And it's entirely up to us to manage it. Because the world's not going to change if people don't change. So how do you manage it? Jabotinsky told us how to manage it. You build an iron wall around yourself. You establish self-defense. You live in America. You have the right to bear arms. You bear arms, right? You send your kids to summer camp. Why aren't they teaching Taekwondo at summer camp? And you're in San Francisco. Every single Chinese, Filipino kid in this town is taking martial arts. Why isn't your kid?
Because it's sad. That's not right for a good Jewish boy.
It certainly isn't.
No, the
That's my
fact
point.
is, it was
That's where
pretty
it
common
changed.
when I was a kid to take some sort of karate. Even I did karate for a short period of time. Not for a long time. So that was
Well, how long? Like a week?
a class.
You took a class?
A cycle of classes.
A semester. Yes, thank you. Like a
Yeah.
semester of. I got the click. You've seen me do like the.
Oh, take it easy.
Hey,
Take it
well,
easy.
I almost
Don't hit
knocked the mic.
Yes,
The
we
mic
believe you.
The mic
We
doesn't
believe
have
you.
its usual aggressive stance, so it's.
So
it's
here you see,
kinda
even
open
a
season on the
nice.
mic.
This is what you thought was the nice Jewish boy.
Even
the
he
yeshiva boy.
learned a little
He's
self-defense.
coming in here. He knows a little self-defense. His dad was in a gang. Huh?
His dad was not in a gang.
His dad was walking around with other gangsters
Holocaust
with
survivors
bats.
with baseball bats.
Let me ask you this.
Well, his was one of those souvenir ones you got
Well,
in the Mets.
I know
No,
your
no,
question, and the answer is it was aluminum.
It was
All right.
aluminum.
You ever
Really?
shoot a
Well, that way
gun,
you don't
Joe?
break it.
You ever shoot a gun?
Twice. The
You
first.
see, he's a gun-toting, martial arts practicing. What else you got that you're
Well,
not telling
the
us?
first time
Joe, you've
was
been to a Grateful
was
Dead
it-
show.
was in Israel. It first time.
Don't-
Yes.
don't
The
worry.
first time was I was in Israel,
I'm loving this.
That's not
and
good
we
for
and
the
we
Jews.
shot rifles.
In Israel, of course.
You have to do that,
Targets
right, when they
and
check your
You
passport?
can't get one in New York.
And I mean, I didn't hit the target. And then the second time was in Camp Michigania. Camp Michigania is a camp in
Michigan?
in the UP in Michigan. It's for alumni of the University of Michigan. I went to law school.
Right,
in
that's
Michigan.
right, you did.
And a lot of my family on Donna's side went to University of Michigan, and there they had rifling where you're on your belly and you're trying to hit a target. It was a lot of fun.
I've never shot a gun.
And they also tried the skeet shooting. That's hard.
Skeet's hard.
because it's hard to hit the target, and also the backfire against your shoulders.
Yeah, that's like if you're hunting for food, because that's like shooting birds.
Okay, right now my mom's wondering if I'm going to tell this story, so I'm going to tell it.
Tell it.
I have not shot a gun, but my father was a major gun enthusiast, to the point of where after retirement, he became an NRA certified instructor.
Wow.
And he worked at the range, and he collected guns, and he kept them in a safe long enough to shoot himself in the knee while cleaning one. That was it for guns.
Wow.
So he laid off all guns after that?
He did. He went back to photography. He's like, well, if I misfire this, it's not potentially lethal.
It's just a picture of my knee.
Yeah.
Well, there's an important safety note in that, because guns
Cops
are
showed up and laughed at
dangerous. Yeah,
Yep.
well, that hurts. Guns are
Yeah, he knew
dangerous,
them all.
man.
I said, oh boy.
How can you have a dad who's an NRA certified instructor who didn't teach you how to handle firearms?
He wanted to, but I was scared of him. He taught my sister. I didn't want to.
Well, why
Scared
not
of
get
him.
your sister on the show?
I am apolitical when it comes to guns. I'm just scared of them. That's it. Bottom line. And that is a nice Jewish boy thing to say. I will own that. I got no problem
Yeah.
with it. It's bad for the Jews, but it's mine.
You know something, personally, I'm scared of confrontation. Like,
Me
I don't
too.
want to get in fights with people. I don't think that's the way to solve problems. I'm just saying that you got it. Like, I'm always calculating, like, what's my option of last resort? When do I want to be pushed into making a decision that I really don't want to make, but I'm doing it because I'm scared?
I'm
When
always
will I
calc-
be intimidated, into action?
I don't know about you, Joe, but I'm always calculating, how can I get away?
Well,
What's the fastest way
I
I
think
can get
Eric
away?
is the most prepared, for an end of the
Apocalypse?
world scenario. If
I've got flats of water.
if bad stuff ever happens, I'm heading over to Eric's
Really?
house.
So good luck getting in.
I'm going to
That's all I
Costco.
know.
Good luck getting in.
I'm going to Costco. I'm rolling up that big door, and I'm just permanently at Costco.
Joe is joking. Larry may not be.
I'm
I'm not joking.
But
I'm not
I'm
joking.
I'm going to Costco.
here's my point.
I got
Is
nothing
like
in my house.
what I'm saying is I don't want to miscast or be misrepresented as some kind of gun nut or kind of radical, violent. It's like that's not it at all. I'm just saying like I don't want to be put in the type of situation that your father was put in and be intimidated and forced to leave my home or be intimidated into doing anything
Wait,
I don't want
Joe's
to do.
father or my father?
His father.
Okay.
I don't want to be intimidated into giving up my lifestyle.
I'm not sure a gun would
compromising my identity.
have helped him.
Well, you knew what to do when someone jumped one of your kids. He got his friends together and they went out with bats and they patrolled their neighborhood. They said, you know what? We're not going to be afraid to walk our streets and we're not going to go out and cut our hair and stop wearing yarmulkes. Those are non-starters. We're Americans. We have a right to do these things. And hey, if we're not getting adequate police protection and there's people who are threatening us, we're going to protect ourselves.
What if they picked the wrong guy?
They're not going out attacking people. They're defending themselves.
Okay, they're waiting for guys.
They established
They're
an
protecting-
organization of
So
defense.
it's not
It's like an arrow. If they
Right.
they were creating a zone, a cone of.
Silence.
And
Yeah,
Fish.
I love that show.
And they
me too.
recognize that if you're going to defend yourself, you need an equalizer, and that's what weapons are. And in America, you have a right to bear arms. So I'm saying, Jews, if you're intimidated, you're scared. If you don't believe it could happen here, you're naive and you're foolish.
So in retrospect, I
Have to
kind of
hammer this
wish
point home.
that the God, I keep forgetting their name. The crazy people from Kansas who hate everyone. Westboro. I
Westboro
wish they had
Baptist
showed
Church.
up at Brandeis
Of course,
just
that
to
guy
see.
that guy died recently.
He
Died.
did.
The head of the.
Fred Phelps.
Fred Phelps,
May his name be
formerly
blotted out.
a civil rights lawyer at one point in his life.
Yeah.
Winner of an NAACP award in 1960 something or other.
Yeah, you smoke enough meth, you can.
You just put on different suits, man. You just put on different suits.
But anyway, you were saying.
But anyway, it would have been kind of cool if they had shown up just to see what would have happened.
When
Well,
that,
you didn't explain what happened. Why they didn't show up.
But they got a flat tire, didn't they?
That's right.
Yeah, they couldn't show. They were in Palo
Someone,
Alto,
I assume someone.
Stanford.
Stanford.
University.
Someone at Stanford.
They were sabotaged.
Purposely, exactly.
Right.
Sabotaged.
So there you go. I love it. You had the Stanford students. They basically resorted to illegal action
Yeah.
to neutralize the threat. They didn't have to beat them up or harm them or anything like that. But they accomplished their goal. But they had to color outside the lines to make it happen.
I'm not sure you ever finished that conversation, but you were saying
We start things that don't finish.
you
That's how it
were
goes,
saying that the administration had saying to keep quiet,
And
but Eric sort of
was not going to keep
he was
quiet.
not on board with
And
that.
there were a million emails back and forth.
Let's take action.
Let's not take action.
Let's do a counter protest.
Yeah,
No,
so-
we can't.
And of course, what's great with us was like, there was a certain percentage of guys who went, oh, finally, here's my chance to bestow wisdom. Let me compose the most eloquent email telling people exactly what they need to do. Those were my favorite emails.
Yeah.
Because they reminded me of being in a fraternity.
Right. Let me tell you the words we live by. Deeds, not words. We had a lot of people sounding off with opinion and philosophy. It reminded me of the scene from the Woody Allen movie where the guys are talking around. It's like, have you read the article in the New Yorker about the Nazis planning to march in Skokie? And Woody Allen's like, oh yeah, well, I think we should get some guys together with some bricks and some bats. And yeah, man, there was an op-ed that was just devastating. And Woody Allen's like, if you want to devastate the Nazis, you really need bricks and bats. An op-ed's not really going to get the job done. And that's what was applying here.
Yeah,
Let me just
we
tell
kept
you.
writing op-eds.
Right, everyone had their opinions and beautifully philosophized, but my point is the activists who array against us to harm us, those words are meaningless. You need the bats, you need your dad with his bats, you need the guns, you need all that stuff. That's what the Israelis understand. And that's what the Russian Jews understand, and that's what the American Jews, the politically correct American Jews, don't understand. And we are now the most assimilated Jews on earth. We're going down the same path as the German Jews. We don't believe it could happen.
Sometimes I leave here very depressed.
You shouldn't be depressed because we've taken initiative and established a state of Israel. It exists for a reason, Let me say something about Westboro Baptist Church.
Okay, and then we got to wrap it up because we've gone quite far afield, perhaps because my topic sucked. But we're into the 2000s here. Usually
You're going to edit it.
I'm
pretty much cut out
edit.
everything that Joe had to say, and we'll be down to our whatever.
Are you? Joe was here. Didn't say a word. It was the weirdest thing.
on the Westboro Baptist
It's like being cut out of a movie.
Yeah, I was in
say-
that. Oh, they cut my scene.
Okay, look, for the record.
Time.
On the Westboro
Green.
Baptist Church, okay,
Right.
for the record, when we first heard they're coming, I didn't know who they were.
Really?
Right. It was Sam who explained to me that these
Shout out to
guys
Sam.
are a scam, that what they do is they provoke confrontation, and then when someone assaults them, they sue them, and,
Right.
and that's how they raise their money. So I didn't know
They
that.
too are lawyers.
But what my concern was not so much that the Westboro Baptist Church represented a threat to us. My concern was that I could see all these lunatic crackpots coming from all over the country, coming out to provoke the American Jewish community, the San Francisco Jewish community. And my rationale was like, if someone comes out here and provokes us, we got to send a strong signal to them and to anyone who's watching them, take your business elsewhere. We're not standing for it. We will resist you. That's where I was coming from. And I will remind you of an incident that happened maybe 15 years earlier when I was in college. The great Jewish American Pulitzer Prize Nobel Award-winning author Elie Wiesel, internationally known man of conscience, came to San Francisco to speak on some Jewish issue or another, and he was assaulted
In an
at the
elevator.
Fairmont Hotel in an elevator.
Oh,
assaulted,
yeah.
and it went unnoticed, unreported, no retaliation. And what was the conclusion? Well, Elie Wiesel's conclusion was, I ain't going back to that town. It's not safe for a Jew in that town to go and speak your mind. So I'm not standing around and waiting for that type of thing to happen again. I'm telling the guys who would come out here and assault a man like Elie Wiesel, one of my fathers, someone who represents our people in such a dignified way, who suffered so much, and you assault him like that, be scared. Be afraid. I don't stand for that.
Well, in an extended Good for the Jews today, we established that we don't like the Westboro Baptist Church.
Bad for the Jews.
I don't think we gained any clarity on whether being a good Jewish boy is good for the Jews or bad for the Jews, so we're just going to have to sit on that.
It doesn't hurt.
We have enjoyed having our first...
The 3 hostages.
3 hostages. I thought Joe raised some interesting points about whether or not that was good for the Jews, which I can see. It's hard to get past, especially as a parent of a teenage boy. The initial tragedy, like someone took your teenage boy and he's out there somewhere being used as a political pawn. But I was reading some stuff today about it. I went, yeah, I could see where this could work out in the politically big picture.
Bad for the Jews. Let's not forget, these guys are not political pawns. They could end up with their heads cut off.
Good point.
All right, so let's not be naive about what's going on. Bad for the Jews.
Okay.
And let it be even worse for the scumbags who took them.
Isn't there some, like, God willing Hebrew thing that people say?
From your mouth to God's ears.
Something like that.
Can you hear Rosen?
There you go. I knew Joe could bring the Hebrew. So that's it for today, for this week. Thank you, Joe Fogel, for joining us in the middle of the couch in the Twilight Lounge.
Guys, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you guys are really creative and fun, and it was a blast. I encourage all other guests. You know, they treated me great. They sent a limo. I really appreciated that. The spread here, you can't see it, but the spread here is amazing. After we're done, man, I'm going to have some bagels.
You dive into that caviar and junk.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, we try to treat our guests well, even if they kick me off the poker team and don't, you know. But that's it. Mom, Kimmels, Mark Samuelson, and Sam, thank you for responding to last week's episode.
Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand?